Welcome to International Love Story,
a podcast about long distance and multicultural relationships.
My name is Ignacio.
And my name is Christina. Today's love story is about a couple that met online as well. So they met through a dating app that's not pretty common. But this is something they can tell you definitely better than I could do it. And we are also going to talk about arranged marriage. So you will learn what an arranged marriage is exactly, as we talked about it in previous episodes already. And we feel like, it's just part of a lot of cultures. And we wanted to learn more about it. And we would also love to share those information with you guys. Because to be honest, before talking to this couple, we did had some stereotypes or stereotype thinking when it comes to arranged marriage. Be prepared to learn more about it firsthand. And while listening to this episode, you might even change your perspectives. Okay. So let's just dive directly into the conversation with Caroline and Telwin. We hope you guys are doing fine. And to anyone who is listening, you might know them as Curry in the States on Instagram and YouTube. So for everyone who doesn't know you guys yet, how would you describe yourself? So who are you? Where are you living right now? And tell us all about you.
Hey guys, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. We are quite opposite ends of the world, aren't we? Yeah. It's so exciting talking to you from so far away.
It's super interesting, yeah, especially with the time difference.
As for the YouTube and Instagram, I'm the Curry, and this one's the States, obviously. So yeah, I'm originally from India. I've been in the United States for around 6 years and married to Carolyn for a little over 2 years. That's the basic intro.
Yeah, and on our YouTube channel, we just like to have fun. We started off with really trying to educate people the differences between India and America, because everything was new to me. And I thought if it was new to me, other people probably don't know it either. But then it's kind of transformed into lots of fun types of videos, home renovation, but we still keep going back to our fun Indian American differences. So it's just like a fun mixture of everything.
Keeps our weekends busy.
So yeah, you were mentioning, Caroline, already that there are a few differences between you guys. We had the pleasure to get to know you already a few days ago. And yeah, but before we jump into the cultural difference, into basically your relationship, we would like to know how you guys met.
Yeah, well, that's obviously one of our most favorite stories to tell.
And Carolyn does it way better than me because I can't animate myself as much as she can. So she'll go ahead.
Telwin's version would be 1 minute. So I'll go ahead and take this one. So Telwin had been living in Nashville, Tennessee, and he was about 28 years old. And his mom was starting to ask him, hey, when are you going to get married? Shall we find you a girl? Do you have a girlfriend? Like, what's the deal? So he was fine with that. And he said, okay, Mom, I know I'm 28. I am trying to, I'm on dating apps. And I was living in Chicago, Illinois, so like 7 hours away. And I was single, and I had just started into the land of dating apps. And I had just downloaded the dating app Coffee Meets Bagel. And Telwin in Nashville was at work, and his boss came over to him and told him that he needed to take a day trip to Chicago to meet with some manufacturers. So Telwin saw this as an excellent opportunity to go to a big city that has a larger Indian population than Nashville has. So he went to his dating apps and set his location to Chicago. So he would have like a week to start connecting with what he thought he was going to connect with Indian girls and meet with them and see what would happen there. So I actually found him because my filter allowed him through. So I swiped right on him, even though he would not have found me through his filter because he had set his filter to only Indian women. So he left me hanging for like...
That makes it seem like I didn't want other women, but I was looking to get married. That's the only reason I had that filter on. It was nothing against other women.
So he let me hang for about... I know. He let me hang for about like 12 hours before he decided that he was going to accept my swipe, and we matched. And I was honestly not expecting for him to like match with me because I was very new to the dating app game. So we matched, we started talking, and then after we had a great conversation, he said, "Oh, actually, I live in Nashville. I'm just visiting Chicago." And that like really made me sad because we had already talked for a few days on the app and I was already like really excited about going on a date with him. And then that's kind of how we began talking about the process of like, he's like, "I'm not being weird, I promise. I'm not like looking for like a hookup. I'm actually trying to meet with like Indian girls and like see like marriage perspectives," if that makes sense. So I understood and we kept talking back and forth. And he said, "I'm really sorry that I might have confused you, but why not like, let's just go out salsa dancing. Worst thing happens is we have a lot of fun salsa dancing." And I love to dance. So I was like, you know what? You're right. He seems nice. So we went out salsa dancing, kind of knowing that it was really never going to go anywhere because he didn't live in Chicago. So on that first date, we went in with the expectations that maybe nothing was going to happen. So we kind of were completely ourselves. We had so much fun. We were the only ones there because there was a huge snowstorm in Chicago that kept everyone home. And we talked about how he was there kind of trying to connect with Indian women. We were talking about the dating scene in both India and America. And by allowing ourselves to be completely like friend zoning right in the beginning, we actually had such an amazing first date. And when we walked away saying, "Bye, I hope everything works out for you," a few days later, we realized like, I didn't want that to end. And we actually kept talking and just a few weeks later decided that we were going to make it work for us. So that's like, kind of an opposite way of getting together.
Mm. Especially that you both didn't expect that this might happen. So you both didn't have like any expectations. And what I would be interested now is, especially to you, Caroline, this question is for you. What attracted you when swiping for him? So what was it that you were like, okay, I kind of want to know this guy. He seems interesting.
Oh, I know. The exact photo that made me interested was him on a sailboat, like leaning against the mast with the wind in his hair. And I was like, whatever that situation is, I want to be part of it.
The photo was from 50 feet away, so it could have been anyone, to be honest.
I knew the photo. There were like 5 photos, but that was the main one that really excited me. I didn't even know he was Indian. So that like when I went there, I knew that he was some ethnicity, but I didn't know really what it was. And I wasn't sure like how to get into that conversation. It's always sort of like an awkward topic. Like, what are you?
No, I remember you trying to throw out words that you thought would stick and I would react.
I did. Like one of the questions in our early texting day was like, what's your favorite food? And I was like, oh, I like Chinese food. I like German food. I like Indian food. I really like naan. And seeing if he was like, oh yeah, that's my favorite food. I'm so silly. Like that's a good way to figure out where he's from.
Did it work?
Well, kind of. I think I still didn't exactly know he was Indian. Did you know what I was doing and you were punishing me?
No, like I couldn't like all of a sudden act excited. Oh, naan. It's not like you're feeding me naan. You're just talking about it. So, okay. Yeah, I don't think she knew the exact ethnicity. Plus my name is kind of different. It's not a standard Indian name.
If you Google that name, it doesn't say Indian.
Yeah,
so.
but bunch of generators show up for some reason. So it's not like a human name, I guess. But yeah, she figured it out when we met. In fact, I was too Indian for her when we met.
Oh.
Yeah, I figured since he was on American dating apps and everything, I didn't know what I was getting into. We had never spoken. And when he got there and his accent was so thick, I was like, oh, okay. I think he's Indian. And I think he was not raised here because he has an accent. And so that's really when we got into it. So then we spoke about where he's from. And then he was very honest from the beginning. He's like, yeah, I know. I'm sorry again that I kind of misled you with my location, but this is what I'm trying to do. My mom was like wondering when I was getting married. And so I wanted to come to Chicago and be able to meet with some Indian girls. And then that's when we started talking. And that's really when I got the feeling that, well, I don't think we can work because I wouldn't want to like get in the way of what you and your parents are expecting to happen.
Especially on the first date, talking about topics like this. I mean, first of all, it shows how much you trusted each other already without even knowing each other. So you texted a little bit more, obviously, but you had very serious topics from the beginning, seems like. And that you guys still decided to get to know each other and still decided to dance together, and that you felt a connection, even though if you both kind of knew, okay, this is not supposed to work out because we are looking for something else, and how is this going to work? And I don't want to, especially you, Caroline, I don't want to be in his way of dating the future wife or his future wife. Just makes me think, what happened in that moment that you guys decided, when you decided it, okay, we kind of want to see where this is going to lead. So what were your thoughts when you decided, okay, we would like to keep on dating each other?
That's super clear for me. I know exactly that moment, and I don't know if you have the same. I don't know what your moment is,
Okay.
but my moment was, so after we ended our evening at like 4 a.m., still at the salsa dancing bar, still the only ones there. The DJ was just playing songs for us. We already had a great conversation, right? But on first dates, your full personality doesn't really come out. So after we kind of ended that night, knowing that we weren't really going to date. So we kind of took it on ourselves to like help each other, like being like, this was really cool what you did there. I really liked this about you. Kind of like good job on that. You should use that on your next date, like kind of like grading each other. But so we go home. So like now we already have this friend relationship. So a few days later, we start calling each other and talking. And like I said, Telwin's accent is like really thick, probably thicker than it is now. That was 3 years ago. And so once again, I still don't know everything about him, like how long he's been in the US. And so I was still kind of holding back some of like my personality, and like, I wouldn't say I have a sarcastic sense of humor, but I do have a sense of humor that like comes out a lot. And I was holding that back because I didn't know if he would get my jokes, like like any normal, like an American would. And so one time I just like, okay, I'm just gonna like be me and like throw in my jokes. And he completely like picked up on it and he laughed. And I was like, oh, okay, he gets it. Okay. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, there's no barrier at all. Like he gets it. Now I can completely be me. And then that was my moment. I was like, okay, this can work. I can make him laugh. It can work.
So you both lean in the conversation.
Yes, exactly. Do you have a moment
Oh yeah.
that you knew you were destined for me?
Oh yeah, I had a couple of moments actually, but one that stands out the most was it may not sound as fancy. Like I think you had come to visit me and you were doing something and there's like phone calls. I don't remember the exact situation, but it was a little bit stressful, nothing crazy, but we were just going through phone calls back and forth. And Carolyn just looked at me and smiled, and there was a level of peace in me. And I'm like, gosh, that is amazing. Like she said nothing. I was driving, she was sitting. I looked at her, she just turned around and smiled. And I was like, that just felt good. I just stopped worrying about whatever I was worrying. And I was like, this would be nice to have for the rest of my life. So that was pretty much the moment that I can remember.
I have goosebumps. Oh. That's so romantic. That's so romantic. And yeah, you guys obviously, I mean, now you're living together. You made it work. So you felt this strong bond and you wanted to know where this is going to lead you because you both knew this is not the end. So there has to be another date and we kind of want to make it work. And you made it work, obviously. But how did you make it work? So what happened afterwards?
We said, okay, let's catch up on Saturday because we have nothing else planned and I'm flying off Sunday. So we thought of meeting up again and we didn't want to be fancy. We thought of let's meet up at the same place, the exact same date. Nothing fancy to plan. And Carolyn wore the exact same dress that she wore before. And most girls won't do that. So
Yes, that is a good point because when I say we like literally hid nothing from each other, we hid nothing from each other. So after that first date and we decided we were going to be friends, the next day he was like, listen, I haven't like met up with anybody else. Would you like to go out again? And we were trying to plan like something super different. And I was like, you know what worked last night worked. Let's just go out dancing again. So I meet him there and I take off my coat and I say, listen, I'm wearing the same dress because I bought this dress for this date to go salsa dancing and it's probably the only time I can ever wear it. So I'm wearing it again. And I was like seeing what his reaction would be because no girl would ever do that. No American girl ever wears the same clothes like twice on the same date, you know? And he was so cool about it and we both laughed and we really knew that our personalities jived from then. But like your question asked, like, how were we going to make it work? So when we decided that we were going to try to make it work, he was much more worried than I was. And that's because I wasn't really sure of the full extent of what would need, like the whole process of marriage in India and introducing me to his family. So he even kind of tried to talk me out of it again. He was like, listen, it's going to be difficult. India is hard. Like, we can't show our relationship on social media for a long time. It's just going to be maybe an uphill battle. Are you sure you want to do that? And here I am still pretty oblivious to it. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's going to be fine. I'm fine. We're fine. Let's just do it. So we decided to start dating and sure enough, like no social media. I quickly learned he wasn't going to tell his family about me, no matter how serious we were. What was going on through your head?
well, when she was saying all this and she was okay, I also knew the fact that she didn't know everything and she was agreeing to terms that she wasn't aware of. So it's not really fair on my part to just say, okay, you said yes, but you don't really know what you're saying yes to. So I thought we do need to spend more time together to know this is really for life. And when we are sure we're going to get married, that's when I tell my parents. And that's when we go forward with it. And we take some time to really know each other. Because the couple of dates that we had, it's generally easy to have fun dates. It's the mundane Saturday afternoons that's tricky to make entertaining. So let's do that and see if life is still fun and we get along.
So I would say the first couple of dates that we had in Chicago before he went back to Nashville, those were like dates, like fun dates. When we decided a few weeks later we were going to start a relationship, in India, they call that a proposal. So Telwin did actually propose to me. And that is not a proposal for marriage. It's not a ring. It's nothing official like that. But it is official in the sense that now we're proposed and we're going to start like dating with a purpose. So when you propose, like you have to go through a lot of discussions, because when you officially start to date, that means that you're really thinking about marriage like very seriously. You're not just, yeah, I just started dating this girl and I'll see how it goes for a month. Like you're really putting in an effort because you first see marriage in the near future. So for that, we really discussed a lot about like what we want out of life, and we already from that we realized how similar we were. Our financial goals were really similar. We had talked about our parents and our siblings, and we realized that they were really similar. So we were excited to go forward with it because we really didn't foresee any issues.
Yeah, and we were not judging each other by stereotypes that we had. We were judging each other by our individual personalities. I believe that extra time helped us do that. Otherwise, you generally tend to stereotype their personalities.
And when you start dating somebody and you're both knowing that the end result would be marriage, like we didn't play any games like, oh, I texted him, now I have to wait 3 hours for him to text me back because I don't look cool. Or we really just went in and kind of, we were like always married in a way, I feel like.
Yeah, that was the best part about the relationship. There was no ego or games. Life was much easier and communication was way easier, I'd say. So it was easy to express exactly what we wanted.
Because you had to. You had to, because you knew if this is going to work out, the next step will be we will get married. And a marriage is nothing for just a few months. It's going to be for a lifetime if everything works out. Yeah. What I would be interested in, because this is also a good point you mentioned, you said you talked about everything. You also talked about a financial plan. What else is there you talked about? Because I can imagine that you guys kind of just got to know each other, and from one day to the other, it's like a shift, like going 100% into it would have, to be honest, overwhelmed me. So I understand that you have to be very honest from the beginning, a clear communication. But what gave you the strength, first of all, to communicate that way? And what exactly did you talk about? And why did you know that those topics are very important to you to be clear on it from the beginning?
Honestly, so from that first night in Chicago, I had a ton of fun questions for Telwin about, like, so you're coming to Chicago to maybe meet with Indian girls to see if you want to get married to them? And so he's like, yeah, but it doesn't, it's better than what it sounds. And he kind of described to me the process of arranged marriage, like modern arranged marriage. So no, like him describing that process to me, it's kind of the same process we took. We kind of on our own figured out if our families would align, if our values would align, if we had the same goals in life, if we
Yeah, it was some of the big ticket items like, do you want to have kids? Like those are the things that you can't change 10 years down the line. You know what your the finer details can be tweaked later, but the bigger plans cannot really change. Otherwise, one of us is going to be miserable. So, and in terms of financial stuff, even day to day, the way we took each other out and what we spent, you can observe the financial habits anyways. So things like that are clear enough. So the big stuff was clear. And as for asking heavy questions that you should ideally be nervous about, I always think, what's the worst that could happen? And when you actually process in your mind, the worst that could happen is not that bad. So might as well ask it. So that's how we got to where we are, I guess.
Mm.
And clearly we asked the right questions because 2 years later, we're still fine, I think. Are you fine? I'm fine.
Fingers crossed.
You guys look fine. I could say so.
Thank
You
you.
still look very, very happy. And this is, I mean, also a question for you, Caroline. When you heard the word arranged marriage, what were you thinking about?
I had like zero information on what an arranged marriage was. And so I just asked all of the questions because at the time we weren't going to get married and he was just now my friend. So I was like, okay, tell me everything about this process because in America, we have like a negative connotation to it because I think movies and books and news make it 100% like a negative experience. And so I kind of already was like, oh my gosh, really? So you're gonna like, your parents are making you get married. And he was like, no, that's not what arranged marriage is at all. And so from then, oh my gosh, I was so interested. And Telwin explained to me the whole process of it. And there's lots of different styles of arranged marriage. So, you know, how his family was handling it is not going to be the same as how every family handles arranged marriages. And of course, there are areas in India where arranged marriage is sadly more of like a forced marriage. And that's completely not the same thing. But Telwin was describing to me what a modern arranged marriage was. And essentially, there is.
Yeah, the major distinction is you have a choice. So if you have a choice, arranged marriage is pretty awesome. But if it's forced upon you, that's pretty terrible and ideally shouldn't be done. But yeah, so in movies, they usually show people like the kid comes home and then they're saying, hey, we found this guy for you. And like 2 weeks later, they get married and the kid is miserable. But the ideal situation is the kid has nothing going on at the time and the parents are actually helping the kid find the partner for the rest of their life and evaluating the partner based on other stuff rather than just infatuation. So they're kind of being a much mature wingman in a sense in kind of bringing two people together.
So there's an app called Shadi.com, which is one of the most popular arranged marriage apps. And the difference between that and like a normal dating app, like our dating app, Coffee Meets Bagel, is that on Shadi.com, normally your brother, if you have an older brother, or if you don't, maybe an older sibling or your parents have your login credentials and they basically run it for you. And on these apps, they talk everything from height, GPA.
Usually you have to enter your salary in there again to see like the financial backgrounds match and stuff.
Like the exact minute you were born, you know, astrology items. And so from there, different families are able to find potential mates for their children. But once they find, you know, like some people that they like and they like create a list, the kids are able to go on a date and like see if they're really compatible. Modern arranged marriage isn't actually like, hey, I found a girl for you. Now you're going to get married to her in 2 weeks. It's not really like that at all. And I thought, that's kind of a great system. I fully trust my parents. If my parents had gone through that much work and found me like 3 potential guys and set up lunch dates for me, I would have been like, what a fantastic system this is. And the great thing is both people know that they're going in and they both have the same expectation to get married. It's not like you just meet somebody at a bar and you yourself know you want to get married and this guy never wants to get married. And so you start dating and never talk about marriage because talking about marriage is super taboo on a date in America. And then you're in a relationship for 5 months and then realize this guy his future doesn't align with mine at all. And then you're heartbroken. It's a rough system out there.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I understand, and that's actually a very good point to be clear from the beginning. What do you expect from life? What is your financial situation? And obviously, also not in Europe, it's nothing you would talk on the first date. So I'm just amazed by how you guys were able to communicate it in a way that you both didn't freak out, first of all. And we Europeans, we do have this picture of forced marriage when we think about arranged marriage as well. So it's not only Americans, it's Europeans as well, as I can talk for myself.
Yeah. I think it's a stereotype.
This is why I think, like, when we first talked and you were educating us, I mean, there's no other word I could use in that moment, because you were educating us what an arranged or modern arranged marriage is. I was amazed as well, because it's totally different to what I expect. So yeah, thank you so much for that in general. And also, still amazed that you guys basically, you were like, okay, let's do it. Let's just go for it. So you were like an open book.
So from there, we did have to like introduce his parents to the fact that I was not Indian. Actually, they took it really well. Like because Telwin is not Hindu, I think that was something that worked in our favor.
Yeah, and I can tell you, my parents were cool, so things were pretty smooth. In some cases, even in arranged marriage, the parents will look at the religion and the exact caste to match. So there's a lot of filters before they find your potential partner. So there's a lot of hurdles you have to cross to be an exact match. So in my case, my parents were like, oh, okay, that's cool. They were pretty chill in that sense. And plus I said, hey, we're the same religion too. So that's a bonus. And I'm like, oh. And my mom was like, yeah, fair point. Yeah, the only concern they had in our arrangement was, like, if I married Carolyn, there's like the chances of me heading back to India really get slim. Like, it's virtually non-existent, sort of, like, at least in the short term. So that was something they were a little sad about. And the other part was they were concerned if I'm getting married just for the novelty of it. Like, oh, like, just to stand out from my friends or something. And just because something's new and different, I'm attracted just because of that, and I'm not thinking about the rest of my life. So they just wanted to make sure I'm judging Carolyn just for the person she is rather than the novelty of the situation.
So you had an open communication with your parents as well.
Yeah, I actually don't really talk to my parents as much as I should, or as much as Carolyn talks to her parents, but when we communicate, we are pretty easy and we do understand each other. And they were just realistic expectations. There were no crazy expectations from my parents. And the only expectation my mom had was she wanted to make sure she's a good girl. That's all. So in that ways, it is pretty easy. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, there could be other criteria, like not to muddy the water with more customs and traditions. There could be things like dowry and how's the wedding gonna be, and like 7 different traditions that stand in the way that need to be checked. But in this case, at least for my parents, they were like, yeah, is she a good girl? We're all for it.
How long did it take until you told your family that you are in a relationship with an American?
Yeah, roughly around 4 months. And then a couple of weeks were required to convince that she is the right girl, because they pretty much had video calls to talk. And they were understanding of the fact that they couldn't talk to her directly, so they were sort of helpless that they have to go by what I'm saying. So that was probably making them a little nervous because I'm only going to say the good things. So they're like, God, there's no one else we can get an opinion from. Whereas in an arranged marriage, you actually research the potential partner, you ask people around, you actually have a big network that actually, like, not just the girls. Like, if I was in an arranged marriage, you not only ask the girl's family, but there's a network of friends, like friends of friends who know them, and you get reviews from everyone, like, how's the person? Like, yeah, oh, is he an alcoholic and stuff? So everything comes out when you do this background research. So now they couldn't do anything because they didn't know anyone. So it's just my word. So that was making them a little nervous, but I think a couple of video calls probably put them to ease.
They were going in blind.
Yeah, they were going in blind.
But were your families living in India?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So they basically trusted your word. They met Caroline on FaceTime, on video calls, and then they approved.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
At least they said they did. I guess they did.
I did ask, hey, Mom, do you have a better option lined up? She said, sadly, no. So no. Yeah, but I was pretty.
I hope that was just a joke.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, they told me initially, like, if you tell me you want us to find a girl, only then we are putting in the work, else we are not putting in the work. So yeah, they didn't really do much. You're like, yeah, you go ahead. If you want us to find your girl, we'll find your girl. But we are not going to do an extra effort.
I think they were relieved they didn't have to go through the whole process.
Yeah, they sure were. Yeah. But yeah,
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, probably fun too, I imagine. But yeah, it's quite some work. And plus, you get to blame them if the potential match doesn't turn out well. You'll be like, Mom, you're the one who found her for me.
So something I find really interesting is, just like arranged marriage is a term and the most common form of marriage in India, when you're not arranged, they call it a love marriage. And like, Telwin didn't exactly say that. He just kept throwing the term around. Yeah, love marriage, a love marriage. And I'm like, yeah, duh, we're getting married, we're in love. And then he's like, no, that's what they call us because we weren't arranged. And so in India, if your son is getting married, everybody asks, oh, was it arranged or was it a love marriage? And so, like, you have two criteria, which is so funny to think about.
It is, yeah. And sometimes there's a midway where you love the person and you introduce the person. So it's sometimes called love/arranged marriage because all the families are on board. So then you call it love/arranged. But on a broad scale, you have love and arranged marriage. There's two separate terms. And this goes on for the rest of your lives, actually. Like, you can ask your elders, like, hey, were you guys love marriage or arranged marriage? Kind of get the gist of how they met.
So scandalous.
Yeah, so your marriage is a love marriage. And this basically, so yeah, obviously you're married. But before we jump into how you guys got married, how long it took from your first date to your marriage, I would like to know, Caroline, how was the first time you FaceTimed or you video called with Telwin's parents? So how was it? Like, what did you think before? How did you prepare yourself? Did you freak out?
Yes, I was terrified because they speak English, but Telwin had let me know that just because they speak English doesn't mean that they've ever spoken to an American in English. And he told me, talk slow, talk slow, talk slow. And also,
yeah, the thing is, Carolyn, like she says, I have an accent. She has an American accent, which is not easy to interpret where you're back in India. And she generally talks faster than a usual American as well. So it's like, whoa, you got to slow down. Not many people can understand you. Like, so that's the only tip I said, like, just slow down and you should be good.
But I think the scariest part was that our Indian side of our relationship, Telwin completely controlled all of the information flow. So I didn't want to accidentally say something that hadn't 100% been conveyed in India. So I was just only answering what was asked, only smiling, only nodding, and trying not to like say anything that could accidentally incriminate Telwin.
Yeah, and as you guys have observed, Carolyn does like to talk. So I was worried that she would spill the beans on some of the things that she shouldn't have, and would get us in trouble.
So, like now, I don't even remember what things I shouldn't say, but I mean, probably everything's out in the open now anyway. But I just remember, like, okay, just be quiet. Don't try to add anything that might accidentally not align with like a certain timeline or some facts that haven't been fully given.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I would have freaked out before. Just thinking about it makes me nervous already. Like putting myself in your situation, it's incredible, like how you managed everything and what brought you to where you are right now. So it's a huge inspiration. And I also know, because last time we talked, I think there was one thing, like, didn't you, Caroline, met one of his family members before you guys got married and you made a bad impression? What was it again?
Yes, that story still brings almost tears to my eyes. So Telwin has a cousin in Chicago, and her parents both live with her most of the year. And when they're not with her in Chicago, they go to India. And so her dad is your mom's brother.
Yeah. So it's basically my dad's sister who actually lives in Chicago. So her kids live there too.
So I wore what I thought was a perfectly adorable outfit, and it looked great. Everybody here in America would just love it. It was a cute tank top, very cute. But Telwin just kind of left out that I shouldn't be showing my shoulders as much as I was, and you just let me go in blind, like feeding me to the beasts.
I probably gave you a hint, but you were
Not a strong enough hint. So I go there, and well, first thing that went awry was I'm sitting there. We went for breakfast, and Telwin's cousin is amazing, and she loves us, and we're having so much fun. And her dad, Telwin's uncle, is standing upstairs, looking over the balcony, and oh my goodness, he just did not look very happy. And so I like saw him in the corner of my eye looking, and I'm like, should I pretend I don't see him? Should I just look at Telwin? What should happen? So I'm like kind of trying to like poke Telwin, but I'm not allowed to touch Telwin. So I'm like kicking him from under the chair, like, help, help. So finally
I'm being watched.
I am. So finally, he decides to come down and have breakfast with us. And he did not say one word. He's sitting at the end of the table, and people are just kind of ignoring him. And I'm a nice person. I'm like, I should bring him into the conversation, right? So part A of the evening that did not go well is I leaned across the table. I said, stop. He had just gotten back from India. He had only been in the US for a few days. So I was like, so how are you enjoying America? He goes, I hate it here. And he did not smile. He did not laugh. It was not a joke. He was telling the truth. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't know where to go from there. So the whole rest of the breakfast is fine, and we're all eating, and we finally like say our goodbyes and go home. And a few days later is when the storm came in. He had told your mom.
Mhm.
He had told Telwin's mom about my outfit and my shoulders that were showing, and that he didn't like it, and that I was dressed inappropriately. And because that's the only impression that Telwin's mom has of me now, is from her brother who actually met me. And she called Telwin scared. Oh my gosh, who are you marrying? Oh, it was such a mess. How did you solve that?
Yeah, it took a lot of phone calls and time to get over that. So yeah, that was quite a major bump, because again, like I said, I'm only gonna talk good things. They know that. So it's like the only other point of view that they received wasn't very nice. So that was a little bit of a mess to clear up. So it took a lot of phone calls and convincing. But yeah.
And from then on, Telwin learned his lesson to over explain everything to me. So instead of, this is one great tip for people who are dating people of different cultures, because you yourself, you know everything and you know the culture in and out. Don't just say, hey, wear a different shirt, because to me that's like controlling me. And I'm like, well, I'm going to wear this shirt because I like this shirt and it looks nice. But I didn't fully understand the full background of why I shouldn't wear this shirt. And so if you would have completely explained everything, I would have changed, no problem. And we could have avoided about a week of tears and
Yeah,
disappointment.
yeah, I knew the gist, but I didn't think the issue was going to snowball into such a big deal. But I did give a hint because I thought it may not be such a big issue, and we learned that lesson. And when we went to India, I think we took measures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't, a lot of American women go into an Indian relationship knowing that there are some like restrictions on either like a little bit of your personality when you're around other Indian people, or definitely your clothing. And a lot of people go into it with the thought of, well, I am not going to be controlled. Nobody is going to tell me what I can and can't wear, what I can and can't say. And of course, you can for sure stick to those beliefs to a certain extent. But like I said, if Telwin had gone more into detail and like respectfully explained everything that could and would happen if I chose to stick with my outfit, or maybe if I would have said something that I shouldn't, then you can go about it in a smart way and know that you don't want to make unnecessary waves over a shirt that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Stick to your guns and stay true to your personality, but to a certain extent, choose your battles.
Yeah. And yeah, like she said, some level of compromise is at times needed so that all the cultures feel equally respected.
You were just mentioning that it was a big deal. So tears for approximately 1 week. So it took a time to solve this.
Yeah.
A lot of explanation, a lot of phone calls. I can only imagine how sad and lost you felt in that moment, Caroline, because you really didn't think about it and you didn't think that this will be a big deal, because obviously you wouldn't have worn this shirt otherwise. But once you convinced your parents that this is not on purpose, so that this is that you absolutely didn't think about it, what exactly did you say to basically to calm down the situation, may I ask?
Well, I think a lot of the issue was like the surface issue was the shirt. But when the uncle told Telwin's mom about it, she kind of pictured the rest of her and her son's life like an American girl. They thought about it also like from my side. They're like, Telwin, this is going to be hard for her. Like, it's not fair for her to not get it or to get in trouble for things that she's used to. So they were honestly being I wasn't part of this conversation, but what was said to Telwin was out of love for both me and him. It wasn't, she wore a tank top, we don't want her ever. And, I know that they really were looking out for me, because it is hard to go into such a different conservative culture, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, that's perfectly true. And it came from a sense of concern and care. Like if they didn't care about me, they wouldn't have questioned me. I'm like, yeah, why do we care? He's staying half a world away, and it's his problems to deal with. And that's not. So they were all the time and energy that was spent was mainly out of a concern for me. So I understood their point of view. It wasn't like I was dismissive of their thoughts and opinion. Because they have nothing to gain out of all this talk and late night phone calls. So it took me a while to actually convey Carolyn's true personality, hoping they trust, and probably giving some examples and hoping to calm them down. And I also told them when they get here, they can meet her and judge for themselves.
So before you guys got married, they came to the US to meet Caroline, or what happened after you basically?
So that's actually, Telwin was working on bringing them to the US for a visit for quite some time. And after the whole shirt debacle was settled and they had come to terms with me and decided that it was fine, Telwin had restarted looking for tickets again. So when he started talking to his mom, saying, okay, Mom, will this weekend work? Will this weekend, they stayed for a month. Will this month work? She was like, oh, are we coming this month because of a special reason? Kind of like hinting, like, are you going to get married? And Telwin was like, in his own mind, like, well, I guess if they are coming, we should just get married, because why would we bring them here and then not get married and then bring them here again? So I heard wedding bells. So I'm like, okay, like we should do this. And so he was like, okay, my parents are coming in like a month.
Yeah, it was like a couple of months. So when we hung up from the phone call, our discussion was like, we either get married in this next couple of months when they get here, or we have to push it by a year, because they have to be there, or we have to be in India. One of the two has to happen, and we are going to travel once a year roughly. So it has to be either in the next couple of months, or we have to push the wedding by a year. And we spoke about it, and we were like, yeah, there's no reason to delay. Let's just get married. That's how the discussion went pretty much. There was no ring, there was nothing, there was no formal proposal. So,
but there was a wedding date.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
at that point, it was about 6 months from our first date to when Telwin bought his parents' flight tickets. It was like 6 months later. So from that day, we were like, okay, so your parents are getting here in November. So we are planning a November wedding right now. So we planned a wedding, and I said, okay, Telwin, we are planning a wedding. So clearly we're getting married, but I still want a proposal and I still want an engagement. And I want it to be a surprise. Completely not thinking that he could pull that off, because how can you surprise somebody that already has their wedding date? And he did. I was so surprised when he proposed to me. You did a really good job surprising me.
Well, the thing is, Carolyn and her sister kept asking me, where's the ring? Where's the ring? And I was like, do you want me to just hand you the ring, like in a random conversation, like, here's the ring? Like, you have to get the ring in style. Like, stop asking me. I'll do it before the wedding. I'm aware of it.
I did have to clarify what type of ring, because in India, a super popular style is just the gold band. But I wanted a diamond. I wanted a solitaire diamond. So I was being a little pushy in the fact that I was like trying to hint to him, I want a Western style engagement ring. I don't just want a gold band. And he followed the rules.
It would have been a lot cheaper, but okay.
So to get married super quick, we're both Catholic. So we had to, a traditional Catholic wedding, you have to plan it out with the priest like at least a year in advance. You have to take your wedding classes. You have to get all of your first communion and your Catholic records and your baptism records. So we needed to work super fast. And we did. Telwin's mom was able to get all of his baptism and first communion and confirmation records sent over from India. My parents got all of my papers. I was on the phone with our priest and I was like, I know it's fast, but this is why it has to be. And like as the Catholic Church and our parents, and we worked together and we pulled off a beautiful small wedding.
Yeah, we probably emotionally blackmailed everyone saying that my parents are here just for the 3 weeks and we have to do it. There's no other option. So the people were nice and they were accommodating of the fact. So that helped a lot. And our wedding was small. It was just like close friends and families, like 30 people. So that helped. And it was a close-knit wedding.
Yeah, so our wedding day actually turned out to be 8 months from our first date, which was pretty cute. And completely on accident, the day that Telwin proposed to me was the same anniversary date that my sister's husband proposed to her 5 years before. So when I called up and said, he proposed, she's like, this is the same day I got engaged too. So that was just like a great sign from the gods that it was all meant to be on the time trajectory that was forced upon us.
And you said that you had a small wedding in the US, but how do you plan such a wedding, even though if it's a small wedding, in just a short time and in general? Because there were a few expectations, I assume, from your families as well. So what did you do to have a wedding that's going to involve everyone?
Well, actually, that's an excellent question. And I'm really happy you asked that because that brings up something that was another reason why we knew we were super compatible early in the marriage talking stages. Because actually, a huge issue that couples have, I know in America, and I think in India too, is like wedding budget expectations. You know, everybody thinks that it's every American girl's dream to have this huge $30,000, $40,000 wedding. And I told him right off the bat, I don't want that. And in India, it's custom to have 3,000 people at your wedding.
Yeah, like 500 is sort of the base minimum that you have. So
Minimum 500.
Wow.
Normal 1,000 to 3,000.
It's like you invite the whole neighborhood.
yeah,
And the neighbors' cousins.
yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, I believe in countries like India, you're more social, like you know more people, like you're just talking and talking to like literally, so your circle keeps growing and you can't selectively invite people because if you do that, the other people are going to be mad at you. So eventually you end up inviting everyone you know and the list gets pretty big.
So I actually knew that about Indians. I knew that they have huge weddings. And I told him, I'm like, I don't want a big wedding. And he said, I don't either. And we were like, how are we going to get out of this? So, but what we did want were memories and photos. So getting out of the big wedding, and both our parents, they did not want to pay for large weddings either. So like, my parents never wanted me to have a big wedding. I never wanted a big wedding. Your parents are probably relieved that we didn't have a big wedding. So what we did was we planned our budget and we got a great photographer and videographer. And I actually wore my sister's wedding dress, which is not because of the budget. I was going to wear that no matter what our wedding budget was because I picked it out for her, but really for me. So I already had my wedding dress. Telwin's sister-in-law and brother picked us out beautiful Indian wedding clothes that his parents brought with them. And we just prayed that they would fit, and they did. So we had our Indian wedding clothes, our American wedding clothes. We had a videographer, a photographer. We went all around the city. And for our wedding party, we literally had 30 people at our wedding, and it was small and adorable and just exactly what we wanted. We did not spend so much money, which again is like, we are on the same like financial plan. We both know what we want and what we don't want to spend. And I think we really held that up well.
And the other part is, since the wedding just had 30 people, it was literally like my roommates and my parents, and Carolyn had her parents and her close friends. So these are people that are so close that they have seen you at your best and your worst. Like serving them bad food isn't going to change.
We did not have bad food.
Yeah, I mean, that is not going to change our impression in their eyes. Like, that is literally not going to affect anything. They have seen everything. They know us in and out. Like, my parents are not going to hate me just because the wedding party wasn't fun enough. So that takes a lot of pressure. Like, you're not trying to impress strangers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't really impress your parents because there's nothing more. They know you in and out. So that takes a lot of pressure out of things. And we had a fun pizza place and we had a fun dinner. There's pretty much less pressure to impress anyone, like I said, and it turned out well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we dodged the large wedding bullet.
Like, they're not going to comment like, hey, the dress isn't good enough, or, there's literally nothing. They're not there to judge. They're literally family. But in most cases, apart from your inner circle, people are there to judge. That's a fact of life. When you post pictures on Facebook, for example, people are going to judge. So we didn't have that outer circle invited to our wedding, so it was a lot easier to plan.
Yeah, that's true.
And your families got to know each other in person when Telwin's family fly over to the US. So how did that go? The first encounter?
Yeah, so Telwin's parents made it to the US about 5 days before our wedding. So we picked them up, and that was, my first time meeting them in person. And it went really great. They were so sweet. I learned quickly to talk very slowly. And I mean, Telwin's parents are great at English, but if you've never spoken to an American, then, that can be a language barrier.
We did have time constraints, though, because we both were still working and we had a wedding to plan. So we couldn't exactly give them as much time as they deserve because they were new to the country. And ideally, we would have taken them around and, given them a good introduction to America. But we were still working our jobs because we needed vacation for the wedding and stuff. And we are planning the wedding too. So it was hectic times, I'd say.
It was very hectic. So when my parents came to town for the wedding, I just remembered this now. I was actually still at work and my parents got into town. And so they were texting me, okay, we're at your house. And I'm like, you're at the house? And I'm picturing like Telwin's parents and my parents and like nobody being able to talk to each other. I was like, okay, I'll be right home. I go home and oh my gosh, they were laughing and cracking up and talking and like cooking already. And I was like, it's like you guys already know each other. And Telwin's parents are super similar to my parents. Both of our moms are very domestic and they like to cook, and they're just super sweet and very down to earth. And they really connected right away. And we were all together for about a week, I would say. And the whole time, like, our moms were cooking together and our dads were hanging out on the couch with each other. So your dad's English isn't as great as your mom's English is. So your dad isn't as easy for us to talk to, but he hears us and he understands. But it really worked out a lot better than either of us could have really imagined. So that was lucky.
What a surprise.
I know. Which was so funny because then we just realized more, like after our parents being together and us seeing our parents together, it kind of opened up like a lot of fun discussions for us, like our childhoods and things that we hadn't really gotten to discuss yet. We both have siblings that are about the same amount of years older than us. So we're both the babies of the family. And like really we kind of grew up the same, but in different countries. Just crazy to think about.
It's super crazy to think about it. I mean, that's most probably nothing you would have thought about when dating for the first time and dancing salsa, that it will develop the way it did, and it's going to. I mean, it's not like, okay, you guys get married and then this chapter is closed. So you're still learning from each other. You still learn about each other's culture. And that's the interesting part of such a relationship. So it never gets boring because there's always something you didn't know yet. So there's always something new you're going to learn. So it's super lovely to see you guys right now.
Thank you. I know. I feel like it's never boring. Sometimes it's boring, but even in the boring parts, we're still having fun. So I guess that's how you know you found the right person.
Yeah, definitely. So after you got married, I understand you've never been to India at that point, Caroline, right?
Yes. Up until that point, I had never been to India, but I had always wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
So we did decide, like we did plan an India trip to be a year after our wedding. So, we didn't want to not see Telwin's parents for too long at a time. So we planned our India trip and we went. It was our 1-year wedding anniversary. And we wanted to make sure that when we planned it, Telwin's parents were able to enjoy India with us. And so we took a tourist bird's eye view of India and we went to all the famous spots, the Taj Mahal and the everywhere that you see on Pinterest.
Oh, by the way, I went to all those places for the first time as well. It was because of Carolyn that I was more like a tourist in my own country, because otherwise you usually don't care to travel as much because you take it for granted. I'd never seen the Taj Mahal. But now that Carolyn was coming, they were more of tourists and my parents got to see the Taj Mahal for the first time as well. So it was fun for all of us.
It was so funny, yeah. And that's also when we were planning our India trip, that's when I realized that not everybody speaks Hindi. Another American misconception, everybody speaks Hindi, and that's 100% not true. There are so many languages in India. So even we went some places that Telwin couldn't speak the language, and we were all lost.
How many languages are spoken in India?
That'd be kind of tricky to count. But in general, the global rule is most people do understand English to an extent. To an extent, they may not be fluent, but they can make up a little bit of English. And Hindi is something, again, in most of India, you can get by with Hindi, but that's not naturally spoken everywhere. Usually each state has their own language. So some states prefer to just use their language. The boards and the buses, everything have their own language. So it is usually nice to know, but yeah, it's like having multiple countries in the same place, just divided by the language literally changes and you can't understand a word at times. When you cross borders, gosh, I have no clue what that is.
So and then you were talking English to understand each other.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why most Indians are speaking English as well, basically to communicate.
Yeah.
This is so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So English is global, and then Hindi is again a little bit global across India, but the commonly used language day to day will drastically depend on the state you're in.
Telwin's mom, she grew up in Kerala, and when she and Telwin's dad got married, they moved to a new state, and she was telling me how kind of a few people in the family moved together, and so her and her sister-in-law, they were learning Hindi for the first time together in a new state that they had just moved to. And they were both newlyweds in a new state, learning a new language. So she didn't even know Hindi until she was 27. And I was like, wow, that is so crazy to think. So Telwin speaks 4 languages, actually.
Because you have to, because at the different states you've been, my mother tongue is different compared to the state I grew up in. So you learn different language in school. So you just end up learning it.
Yeah, I see. It's a little bit different. I mean, of course, Europe, you do have different languages as well. But within Germany, obviously, it's so small, it's so tiny. You speak the same language just with several accents. So
that would be the best comparison, actually. if all
Yeah.
European countries are sort of close, if that were one big
Yeah.
country, you would say like, hey, the states have different languages.
Yeah, but this also shows how different the cultures are in general, and especially the American culture and the Indian culture. So were there a few things you had to adjust yourself to because you figured out, okay, that's totally different to what I'm used to? I mean, okay, Telwin is living in the US since several years already, but did you feel that at certain points there was some sort of miscommunication because of that?
I'd say there hasn't been anything that's been like earth shattering, but we often find really funny things that just come up. Like actually just today, this morning, Telwin was waiting for me to cut his hair. And I was downstairs just taking my time. And I go upstairs and he is waiting for me to cut his hair. And he looks at me. He goes, what did you say?
She said she's coming, and I was waiting there for like 15 minutes, and she didn't get here. It's like I was like, she should be here in like 30 seconds. What's up? So I was just making a joke, like, did you get here on your bullock cart, and what's happening?
He goes, did you take your bullock's cart? And I go, my what? Your bullock's cart? I go, I don't know what that is.
Again, there's no S in there. It's bullock cart. But then I had to actually Google and show her what a bullock cart actually looks like.
So 2 years into marriage, and this is the first time he's made this reference that I found hilarious, like an ox cart, like were you waiting on your ox to take you down the street? And I'm like, no, that's not a reference we make in America. But as far as like cultural things, he doesn't understand casseroles. I don't know, in Germany, do you guys eat casseroles?
Yeah.
What are casseroles?
Eintopf.
Ach, Eintopf. One pot.
Like, yeah, like noodles or rice with cheese. He doesn't get it. He likes them to an extent, but in general, he doesn't understand why like a casserole exists. What we are often like, I guess I assume that every song that I hear on the radio that I grew up listening to, like maybe like 90s music, if I heard it on the radio, I just assumed that it would be popular enough to have made it to India. And about 50-50, that's true. But then like there are really, really, really what I thought were globally popular songs that Telwin has never heard of that I find so fun. And then I like to just take that moment and be a pop star and sing the whole thing to him so he understands the cultural references. When we're watching movies, there'll be like references and I'll look over and make sure that he got them. And sometimes he does and sometimes he doesn't. What else? Oh, I know. So did I tell you to ask my dad to marry me, if you could marry me?
Yeah, you had to tell me. I didn't know I had to.
I didn't know. I didn't even know that he didn't know that. I was just telling him, I was like, just making sure that he was going to ask my dad if he could marry me, just like ensuring that he was. And he's like, yeah, but he actually didn't know he was supposed to do that. So he like, like, what am I supposed to do?
I was like, holy cow. In India, you stay away from the girl's dad. That's like one place you stay away from you. Yeah. I had no idea that I had to ask her, but good thing she brought that up before the wedding and I didn't offend anyone.
That could have been awkward.
Yeah, I mean, you would normally do that in Germany as well, but it's not a no-go if you wouldn't. So we are quite relaxed with that. He asked my dad, but just because my aunt basically
I asked the day before, actually.
Yeah, one day before we got married.
So.
You're like, you're okay with this, right? It's happening tomorrow. We already paid for it, but you're good.
So he had his Google translation and he was asking my dad in German, so it would be, darf ich deine Tochter oder kann ich deine Tochter heiraten? So in German is a very strong language. And I didn't know what was going on in that moment because he had his phone in his hand. and was looking at my dad. So he was staring at my dad, and my aunt was standing behind him. So my aunt is super funny. I love her. But she was standing behind him, making sure that he is using the right words. And Nacho at that point didn't know German. Now his German improved a lot. So nowadays it wouldn't be a problem at all. But at that point, he had his phone and he was like, kann ich deine Tochter heiraten?
That is
And I was
so
just
sweet.
passing by and I was like, what's going on here, guys? So I got the whole thing. I was like, why did you make him do that? Because that's a very uncomfortable situation for him here right now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you didn't speak her parents' language. So I bet that was way harder than our situation.
Well, it was.
Did you take it serious?
You know,
I don't even think you took it serious. I don't know.
I just thought I had to do it, so I just went for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, for me, as I said, I just passed by and I saw them all together, him staring at my dad and his phone in his hand. I was like, what's going on? Okay. So I stopped. And that's when I realized, okay, that my aunt is pushing him. He didn't know what to say. And my father was just like, okay, what's going on here? What does he want? Like, oh my God, that's so unfair.
That is so funny. What a great memory. I bet you guys all laugh about that now.
Yes, of course, of course. I mean, my parents loved him from the beginning, so there wasn't a problem at all. So I knew that he didn't even have to ask if it's okay for my father to take away his daughter. So I just thought the situation in that moment I was, how would you say that in English? I think I was even mad for a second because I felt like they were pressuring him. And then I understood what's going on, that he kind of took it with humor afterwards.
Yeah.
But in the very moment, he was overwhelmed. And I was so afraid I might just freak him out and he would say no the next day or wouldn't show up, or I don't know.
Yeah,
There were so many things going through my
what was
head.
your father going to say as well? Right? Like, no, you know what?
Yeah, no, not anymore.
I know.
So yeah, that's.
Hey, we watch a lot of 90 Day Fiancé on TV, and a lot of those parents do say no. So
Yeah.
You're lucky he said yes.
No backsies.
No backsies.
Yeah.
So yeah, things developed well from there on. So as you guys, we also got married, living together since several years already. And yeah, everything is just wonderful. We still learn from each other every day. I think I've mentioned that a couple of times already in several other episodes, but it's just super interesting to learn from each other. And this is why I ask you, like, are you still surprising each other? Because this is what's going to happen most probably for the next few years. In 10 years, you'll be like, okay, I didn't know that. Like, tell me more about it. And you surprised me again. And it's never boring, even though if you have, like, as you, I mean, you're living together since 2 years already, or when did you move together?
Yeah, we've been living together. Well, we've been married for 2 years, and we got our house together right before our wedding. So about 2 years.
Yeah.
I think, we already know, and just like you guys, you already know that there's so many differences between you and how you grew up. For us, we love even more finding about our similarities. Like, we know that, like, Harry Potter was both of our favorite books, which clearly Harry Potter is a global book. So, like, that's not surprising, but it's cute in, like, the way that we read it. Like, I got the books from a library, which libraries aren't, like, the library system in America and India is not the same. So I checked my books out at the library, and he got his books in, what do you call it?
I don't think we should reveal that.
Oh.
I don't think it's legal to get the books the way I got it.
He got his books in a very Indian way, which is different, but the result is we both love and read Harry Potter. But then we have our differences, like, I grew up going to Disney World. There's not, like, really an equivalent in India. But we both, like, what TV shows? Oh, we both watched Friends, like, we both grew up watching Friends. And so, I don't know, sometimes we'll, like, find on our time hop on our Facebook memories, like 10 years ago you were doing this, and then like we'll show each other. And then he'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that day I was studying for a final and I was watching Friends. And I was like, I used to watch Friends when I was studying for my finals too. So it's like really fun finding out the similarities between us, actually.
You figured out that, or you're still figuring out that there are a lot of similarities between you guys. And even though if you are from different cultures, that you used to do the same things. So you used to read Harry Potter, you used to see Friends, and you're still learning from each other every day. I just love it. I love it. It's amazing.
There are some differences too. Like like Carolyn says, hey, when we have a kid, we want a minivan. And I'm like, hey, I've been on a two-wheeler the whole life. Like not to diminish or embarrass anyone, but my entire family, 4 of us, used to go on a two-wheeler, like till we grew up to quite an age. Like I'm like, why do you need a minivan? There's 2 cars sitting right here. You still want a minivan just because there's a kid? So, there are things like that come up that we have different perspectives. At times I'm like, wow, okay. Sometimes in terms of space, like, oh, ideally, I wish to have so much storage. We want to store this. I'm like, I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, no basement, no nothing. And my house wasn't really cluttered. Somewhere things did fit and we did grow up. It's not like we didn't have stuff. So there are some things that are fun differences that we probably have to work out when we get there. But it's there. It's not like everything's exactly the same. And it does take some time and effort to see each other's perspectives at times.
Another perspective that we still have a little bit of trouble seeing eye to eye is that maybe one of the only awkward times before we got married was when Telwin was sitting across the table from me and doing math, like when I graduated. Like I was like, yeah, I graduated this many years ago. And he's like, does that mean that you spent 5 years in college? And I was like, yeah, I took a year because I went to go work at Disney World. And he goes, you what? I was like, yeah, I went to go work at Disney World. So I paused college and then I went back and graduated a year later. And he's like, and your parents let you do that? And I was like, no, my parents encouraged me to do that. And like he does not get that, why my parents would be excited about me leaving college to go work for a theme park. And maybe you guys don't even get it either, but like, it's like a big opportunity here and it's a big resume enhancer.
So that is probably going to be a source of contention. When we do this podcast 20 years later, we might be like, hey, no, we are at a fight because she let the kid do that and I didn't want her to do that.
So I foresee some friction in upcoming years when we have kids, is basically what we're trying to say.
You want to have kids basically brings us to your future plans. So what are your future plans? Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?
In my mind, I see us with 10 kids. No, I'm just kidding. 2 kids, a minivan, and Telwin's mom or both parents living with us.
Oh, nice.
And not full time, probably, because Telwin has his brother and sister-in-law live in India, pretty near his parents, and they have the cutest little girl, Hazel. So at the moment, his mom is having so much fun with her. She's 7 or 8. But when we have kids, we know that she'll want to come over and visit with us for a while. So I think the way that works is you're able to like have your parents come over for maybe like 6 months or
at a time. Max.
So I am super excited and completely expect his parents to come and spend like an extended amount of time over at our house. And actually, completely ironically, I think they'll really enjoy it here because our neighbors across the street are actually Indian. So I think, and their parents live with them. So I just have like this picture of your parents living here and me being like, Telwin, where's your mom? And then me like looking across the street and like your mom and their mom is like hanging out on the front porch together.
See, the thing is, honestly, like Carolyn said during our initial discussion when she met my cousin's dad, and he was like, I hate it here. One of the reasons that, like, when people come in from India, they enjoy the first couple of weeks and then they get bored is because you can't really go anywhere by yourself. It's like, this would be an extreme example, but they sort of are in a prison. They need us to take them anywhere. They can't just walk to places. Like in India, you can just step out of the house and walk to places where you desire to go. Everything's like right there. So that is one thing that concerns me. Like they would be pretty bored here unless we like we can't be on vacation for 6 months. So we have our mundane jobs to get to, but that is one thing that they're probably nervous about, that they'll be bored for an extended period. But in general, I think if the house has a lot of people, that'll keep them interested.
Yeah, Telwin's mom is very excited for kids. So
Yeah.
we don't know when that will happen, but we are excited to have kids.
Some days we are, some days we aren't. The days we want to sleep till 11 a.m., that day we do are like, oh God, thanks. We don't have kids and we can just sleep.
It is an everyday conversation when we're sitting on the couch and we're like, it's so nice not having kids. But then like when we have a burst of energy and like we're walking the dog, we're like, wouldn't it be fun to have a kid?
So we're flip-flopping like by the hour.
It's so cool how honest you are with that.
It can be a good and a bad thing with kids, I tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. So your future plan sounds like I forgot the English word for it. A picture book. Do you say that in English as well?
Oh, yeah. Like, yeah,
picture book?
We don't exactly say that, but yeah, I can see that.
Sounds like a fairy tale.
I think
but a realistic one, that's the thing. So it's not a fairy tale because, eventually it's going to happen.
Yeah. So. And I think it's exciting. We always have like a vacation plan because we know that, visiting India is always, a constant. So just like you guys, I'm sure, because your parents live in different countries. So you're always like needing to go visit them. So it's like, we always kind of have something planned, like your next trip to India is always planned.
Yeah, it's a little bit different with us.
At the moment.
Because of, obviously because of COVID, but...
yeah.
We don't have a long-term plan, fortunately. Unfortunately, not really, because we know already
we have a short-term plan.
Yeah, we have a short-term plan. So
it's not
1 year, 1 year, always 1 year ahead. This is how we can plan right now.
That's also a good way to look at it.
It's an adventure, yeah. Is there anything else you would like to share with anyone who's listening right now? Anything we didn't cover, anything we forget? Any advice you would like to give?
I think that the unfortunate part is that a lot of intercultural relationships do have a lot of struggles. And just because ours didn't have so many struggles, we totally see and understand and are sympathetic for people whose parents weren't so supportive. But I'm just like the cliche thing of, if it works for the two of you, like, don't let your families ruin it. As long as it works for the two of you and you guys can, maybe your parents can come around to it later on. But I definitely think it's worth it. Don't just give up on love because your mom is mad at you. If you're mature enough to think or know it'll work, then I have faith that it'll work. And just be honest with somebody, because if we weren't honest with each other, we would not have.
I'd say communication is the key. The worst thing that could happen is you might break up, but if you don't communicate, you're going to break up eventually anyway. So there's nothing really too much to lose by openly talking about what you exactly want to convey.
It's always best to break up in the beginning. So if you're just honest in the beginning and you break up fast, then clearly it wasn't meant to be. But if you're honest in the beginning and it works, then that's probably why you know it was meant to be, which is kind of the motto we took. We're like, if it's not going to work, we should know right now before we get too far into it.
It's great that you're mentioning this point, communication, because to anyone who's listening to our podcast for a longer while already, you might have noticed that this is the most important thing, because we always talk about it in almost every episode. I would say in 80% of our episodes, we're also talking about communication and why it's important, and that this communication we are having right now, this talk is leading us exactly to this point again. Guys, just remind yourself how important it is to communicate openly and to be on the same page with whatever stage you are at in your life. Always have an open communication with your partner, with your significant other. Otherwise, it will lead into nowhere, or otherwise, at least one person is desperate at a specific point in your relationship, and you don't want that, because that will, as you said, Caroline, before, eventually lead to a breakup. And maybe you could have avoided it before by just talking about it, or figuring out, okay, maybe we're not meant to be, for example, and then it's okay. It hurts, but it's okay. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Love it.
Hey, on a fun note, arranged marriage helps reduce desperation. Because if I turn out to be a loser and I can't impress a girl, I know my parents will find me one. So I'm like, okay, worst case, if she leaves, my mom will find me one. So that's okay. I can concentrate on studies.
But also arranged marriage, because the parents, both sides of parents, put so much work into making this work for their kids. Sometimes if the couples are having an issue, the parents will like talk to each other and kind of solve it, and then tell the kids like, this is what you need to do to fix it. And then it usually works, because the parents have such a good communication, because they've been talking to each other for so long, trying to get their kids together. Which is
so the
funny.
parents would be problem solvers as well.
Yeah.
Because they have to claim responsibility for what they've gotten assent to, right?
Wow.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. True. If you see it like that. Huh? So it could make your life much easier as well. Of course, we're joking about it right now, but yeah, totally. I mean, it's a little bit of what we're saying is also serious. Because I remember that we talked about it last time as well, that first of all, your parents just want the best for you, and you can concentrate on what's going to be next in your life. So you can concentrate on your studies or whatever state you are currently in. So there's a little bit of truth behind it as well. So it's not, yeah.
For sure.
It's so cute.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah. I think we got it all covered.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening to today's episode. And yeah, we hope you've learned the one or the other thing about arranged marriage and what the differences are between love, arranged, and forced marriage. And if you're not following us yet, make sure to follow us on Instagram or on Facebook. It's International Love Story. And feel free to rate this podcast, spread the word if you like what we're doing. And as always, if there's something we can help you guys with, as we do have obviously a lot of experience when it comes to long-distance relationship, multicultural relationships, and also closing the distance, feel free to contact us, and we will put all links in the side notes for you to check it out. And also feel free to contact our guests if you do have further questions. So feel free to contact Caroline and Telwin. With this being said, have a lovely rest of your week. Have a lovely day. Have a lovely morning. Have a lovely afternoon. And our next episode will be published on the 23rd of March. I am going to talk to a couple that has never met before in person. So they are in a long distance relationship without ever seeing each other in person, which I think is crazy and lovely at the same time. So stay tuned and please take care. Bye!